Right, so we're joined by Matt Parrino from nyup.com. How you doing today, Matt?
Good, man. I'm good. Had a little change of plan here. Had to get out in the car. It's raining a little bit. It's been hailing today. Like it's weird. Like I woke up today and I was ready for a nice spring day, and we got a little snow. So only in Buffalo.
Far cry from Vegas, right?
Far, far cry. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're great that we're blessed that you're joining us today, and there's a lot of Bills chatter to talk about. There's tons, to be honest. And Jake, why don't you start us off with our first one today?
Yeah, definitely. So with everything going on, obviously the world's in limbo here. So how surprised are you that the NFL is kind of going through with their draft processes? I mean, we know that everything's going to be virtual. There's a lot of questions by a lot of execs on security of everything, but how surprised are you that they're moving forward with the draft in any capacity?
I'm not surprised for two reasons. First of all, I think that there's obviously a lot of money involved here, a lot of money to be made on the NFL side. So I feel like for them to, they're motivated to go on with this. Now, it's not an ideal scenario. I mean, there are some executives that have voiced some concerns about, not having pro days and not having the chance to, have the guys come into their facilities and meet with them. But like you mentioned, these are very uncertain times. Like, we don't know how long this is going to go for. And so if you push it off a month, what if it's still going the same as it is right now in a month, and you just do it in a month? So I think that, Brandon Beane's kind of take on the whole thing was, when you tell me to show up and draft, I'll draft. That we are confident in the work that we did in the fall and in the winter. And obviously the All-Star games and at the combine. So listen, at the end of the day, you could do all the third, the second, the third, the fourth checks with a lot of these guys, but it comes down to the tape. I mean, from everybody I've talked to. So that tape is going to be more important this year than it ever has before. So you're going to have to rely on your scouts, the synergy in your front office. And it's interesting. Like Brandon even said too, he said they might do a 30 for 30 on this in 20 years, because it's going to be, an unprecedented event, like a completely virtual draft. Who knows what kind of, things could happen from this, missed deadlines for picks, trades that were made that weren't able to be made because, there's hoops that have to be jumped through. There's so many potential problems, on the horizon here, but it's going to be fun. And listen, people are bored right now. People are just kind of locked away in their house. So to have something like this, UFC 249, it was just announced like an hour ago that it's canceled. I was getting really hyped for that. At least it was some sporting event that was going to be on the docket. So now we still have the draft to kind of look forward to and prepare for.
Absolutely. And, you almost have to wonder, is it easier just to load out all the players into Madden, give every NFL GM a team and just go for it? Like, that might be safer than some of the scenarios they're talking about with Zoom and Skype and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on. But, one thing that isn't really a secret, or maybe it's the worst kept secret, is that, and you've definitely touched on it on Twitter, the Bills are definitely in need of a number 2 running back, at least on paper. Maybe they love TJ Yeldon behind the scenes. We have our concerns, preseason he fumbled a lot, even Singletary during the season last year had a couple balls on the turf. That might be a problem. Maybe they go look for a guy that's a little bit more sure-handed, just a guy to complement Singletary. Do you think that they're going to go in the running back category early in the draft?
I'm not convinced that they're going to go early. I think it depends on who's there at 54. I think that, Brandon's been pretty steadfast in his approach to the draft, and that they really like to go best player available early on and then kind of fill in needs as the 4th, 5th, and 6th round kind of come along. So this is not a super deep draft at running back, but some of the options in the 4th round really kind of fit their MO. And actually it's I guess ironic that we're talking tonight, because I just put out an article today for 10 4th round targets for the Bills, and a few of them were running backs. And, there's a couple guys there that, make a lot of sense and kind of fit the mold that they kind of had set last year in Frank Gore. I mean, I was kind of pounding the table late last year to get TJ Yeldon some more, action, get him a jersey, get him some snaps. I don't share your concerns about TJ Yeldon. I thought he was a very effective back in Jacksonville. His last year there in 2018, he had 900 yards from scrimmage and 5 touchdowns. Could you imagine if you inject that production into this Bills offense last year, what we could have been looking at? So I thought that Frank Gore did a great job, respectable job at his age. But I think that we're living in an era of the NFL where you don't need to have, type running backs cast in your offense. So you don't need that grinder in between the tackles and then a speedster and an elusive guy. You could have 3 multi-dimensional running backs like San Francisco does with Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, and Matt Breida. All 3 of those guys can kind of do a little bit of everything. And I think that TJ Yeldon is kind of a sneaky under-the-radar fit for what the Bills could probably do. I mean, Brian Dable is a guy that has been lauded for his creativity, the way that he has injected the jet sweeps into his offense, how he kind of takes chances with the design quarterback runs. I think that a guy like TJ Yeldon opens up his playbook a little bit more. And I don't like the idea that you're going to have a running back on the field at any point, like Frank Gore was down the stretch last year, where you can load 9 in the box and they're going to run the football with him on the field. So I'll say this: at 54, if Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, or DeAndre Swift are on the board, yeah, fingers crossed. I think that that's a best player available scenario.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's a move that they make. I mean, the more and more I look at Jonathan Taylor, the more and more I like him. Obviously, he had some fumbling concerns at Wisconsin as well. So that's something that, you can be really you could really fall in love with a guy based on a few factors, but you got to look at the whole kind of painting to really give your full takeaway on it. And I think that, all of these guys come with, as high end as they can be, I think all of them have a few weaknesses. I like Dobbins too, but I've read some things about him that I think, I don't know if there's necessarily that home run. And I think that, as a matter of fact, it's so interesting. If you look at the top 4 backs in this draft, they're all pretty much in the top 40 on most big boards, overall players, which I think is interesting. But if you look at all the mock drafts, most mock drafts don't have any running backs going in the first round, which tell me there's 4 guys there that people really like, but there's question marks with all of them. So, I think that they're going to address running back in this draft, probably with one of their first 3 picks, if not trading up in the 3rd or the 4th round to maybe get a guy that they're targeting. But I'm not sold 100% that it's going to be at 54 unless one of those 3 are there.
Absolutely. And kind of going back to Yeldon real quick, I was surprised how little they used him. While he did have, there were concerns. There was concerns with every running back they had in training camp last year, from McCoy all the way down to Christian Wade. But Yeldon has that connection with, he knows Kelly Skipper from his days in Jacksonville. I was surprised that with all the connections he had, that he still couldn't manage to get that much playing time. So I was concerned. Maybe I understood the value of Frank Gore, but especially in that Houston game, there's no way anyone could have told me with a straight face that TJ Yeldon would have made more of an impact than Frank Gore, especially down the stretch in that game. So I was, scratching my head.
You go back to when they signed Frank Gore, and I remember the video they put out with Frank Gore putting on the football helmet in the training facility and walking down the hallway, and Brandon talking about that a week later and just how much he respects him. He's wanted him on his team for years. There was a reverence for Frank Gore in that building last year. And not only what he did on the field, but what he meant to the team and the room and the culture. So to take that jersey from him, and let's be honest, Frank Gore and TJ Yeldon, neither of them are going to make an impact on special teams. So you can't activate both of them. So what they have to do is, that's another question I have. Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, any of these guys play special teams? Because to me, that guy that, in this draft, whether it be maybe an Eno Benjamin, who's got a little bit of a speedster, Darrington Evans from Appalachian State, if they could come in here and, maybe make an impact on special teams, I'm not aware if they have any special teams background, if they can play a role, that will help you get a guy dressed and, save, because let's be honest, they like to roster a fullback, which takes away a roster spot. They really like to go really heavy in the secondary with defensive backs. So, there's so many questions going into this draft still, even after all the action in free agency. But I think we'll learn a lot about what they feel about their roster from how they kind of let this draft play out.
And then you look at the Bills this offseason, we've made a lot of moves. Stefon Diggs, A.J. Klein, Morrow Addison, just to name a few. How would you grade the Buffalo Bills this offseason? I mean, we're hearing things like, for instance, from CBS Sports. They're touting the Stefon Diggs trade as one.
Let me jump in there. Okay. First of all, this is a memo to Bills Mafia because they're a real educated and smart fan base, and they usually can kind of sniff out the bullshit. You got to take everything with a grain of salt, depending on who's writing it. Now, CBS Sports has a lot of really great writers. This guy, I've never heard of him. I've never read anything from him before.
In the clicks.
If you look at his Twitter header, he's got like Minnesota Vikings training camp credentials, which means he must cover the Vikings in some way. So there might be a little bias there. I'm not sure. He tweeted out the article, and then once Bills Mafia started going in on him, he deleted it. This offseason to me is an A+, and I'll tell you why. When Arizona went out and traded for DeAndre Hopkins, I was sitting there with my mouth kind of like left open wide, like, damn, can you imagine being Josh Allen, watching them in Arizona go out and get Kyler Murray, another young, on-the-rise quarterback, a bona fide number one, while I'm sitting here with, albeit a really nice collection of talent, but without a number one receiver. What does Brandon Beane do? He immediately reacts, makes the deal for Stefon Diggs, who I think is head and shoulders above anything they could have gotten in the draft for 2020. CeeDee Lamb might be a great receiver. Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs. I don't see them making the impact in 2020 that Stefon Diggs can, especially considering the state of where we are as a society. We might not be getting going until at the earliest training camp. These rookies are going to be, their heads are going to be spinning. So just starting there, the wide receiver move right there. So, that's where you had to improve this offseason. You had a bottom third offense last year, even with all the additions you made and the new look offensive line that they had. They had to get better, and that's what they did right off the bat. And then they solidified things on defense. They lost two big players, their top two sack getters from 2019, and I think that Brandon Beane went out there and got better for what they lost compared to what they brought in. I think that Morrow Addison is a better pure pass rusher than Shaq Lawson, and I think the combination of Vernon Butler and Quentin Jefferson, because of the versatility that Jefferson brings as an interior presence and an edge guy, I think that they're going to probably give you better numbers than Jordan Phillips did last year. And so, I really like the moves that they did, and that's not even mentioning the guy that's going to still be on the roster, who I think is poised to be the biggest breakout candidate of any second-year player in the league in Ed Oliver. I think he's going to shoot to the moon in 2020. And, this might sound like homerism, or like a lot of people know that I was a Bills fan growing up, and obviously I'm on the beat now. But I'm just calling it like I see it, man. A team has not been built in this city like this in decades. And to actually go into a draft where you have the situation presented to yourself that you can go best player available, I think you did everything that you could to put yourself in that position. And, oh, by the way, they had one of the best secondaries in the league last year, and they have a chance to revitalize the career of a former All-Pro in Josh Norman. Will it work out? I don't know. He might come in here and be just as trash as he was last year, and that could happen. But if it doesn't happen, and he's any semblance of the guy that he was in Carolina, now you're cooking. And that's not even considering the fact that they're probably going to add a cornerback in the draft. So I like everything that they did. I think they're going to be better on defense. I think they're going to be able to attack at all three levels of the field. I think that Stefon Diggs is a more bona fide deep threat that John Brown is. John Brown came in here and did a lot of his work in the intermediate range. I think Stefon Diggs is a guy that's going to beat you down the field. Not to mention he's going to beat you off the line of scrimmage with his quickness and explosiveness and his willingness to, take hits and seek out contact. He's an amazing route runner. But what's amazed me about watching a lot of his tape, he doesn't shy away from the physicality. When John Brown catches the ball, he's not going to dig his helmet in there and look to get the extra yards. He is going to probably go down he's a pretty small guy. Stefon Diggs is a little bit stronger. He's a little bit more, he's a different receiver. Like they're similar, but they're different. So I like everything they do. I think Devin Singletary is going to be better. Darryl Williams is a wild card. So I'd say, I hate to throw around A+, but how can you not? If you have the quarterback, you've set him up now with a grade A weapon in Stefon Diggs to make that jump in year 3. Better than any of the year 3 quarterbacks. I think he's situated the best out of any of them. So now all the pieces are in place. Let's see how it goes.
Absolutely. And back when I was in school, I'd take an A+ anytime I could get it, whether I deserved it or not. So I was all over that stuff. And you mentioned Mario Addison. The way I always look at it.
I remember when you were in school,
Yeah.
Sharif.
Yeah.
When I would come out to the old Tonawanda, what was that called? What was the old field called before the new one was built?
Clinton Small,
Clinton
right?
Small State.
Clinton Small. Coming out, talk to old Coach Gross. Those were good days, good times.
He's a good guy, underrated guy, honestly. I'd give him
Very good guy.
He doesn't give out many A+. I will say, when I always think of Mario Addison, I always say this. He was a 10 sack, 9.5 sack guy on a bad defense. Put him in this defense with a little better coverage. What are you going to get out of that guy? He might be a sack leader throughout the whole league when this whole thing's said and done. He's a weapon on defense, 100% through.
And Hughes too. When's the last time Jerry Hughes played with that kind of quality pass rusher on the other side? So, yeah, man. Everywhere you look on this defense, and nobody is talking about this too. I mentioned Ed Oliver. I think he's going to make a substantial jump. I think he's going to be one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league in 2020. That's my expectation. Because I spent all last year talking to him, and every time I talked to him, it was like a new light was going off in his head. I don't think he really knew what he was getting himself into at this level. He came out after his junior season. People warned him about the size and how you have to win in the NFL, and he didn't really take that to heart until he got here, started talking to Kyle Williams, and realized, oh, hey, I do have to really pay attention to fundamentals and technique to win in this league. So now you saw little blips on his radar, and the Dallas game, dude, if he's bringing that for all of 2020, this is a bad defense. And then right behind him, you got Tremaine Edmonds, who's going from year 2 to year 3. He could get crazy and go out there and become the best middle linebacker in the league. He's got the athleticism to do it. He's put in the time and the hours learning the position to do it. So there's a lot of pieces, man. And then I think you could have a real big problem on your hands with Matt Milano if he has another big year, commanding anywhere from 13 to 15 million a year. It's going to be tough to pay that. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about 2020, and this defense is set up to be really, really elite if it can stay healthy.
Absolutely, and they're in the sweet spot of this window, like you said. Edmonds, year 3, Matt Milano going into this year. Oliver's big year. I always look at from a rookie to sophomore season, it's huge because rookies, they're coming off of college, college championships, a lot of bowl games. They're going straight into combine work, mini camp. They don't get rest. But this season is a huge, like their rookie season and the second season is a huge move for them because they're able to rest, reset, go to specialized coaches. They're able to, they have the money to prove themselves a little bit. I think the rookie to sophomore year is a huge jump. So I think Ed Oliver's like a shoo-in for a big jump. And we saw a jump out of Josh Allen last year. That's usually where you see their maturation process lead them. And we're all expecting Josh Allen to take another jump here, right? We kind of need him to. We went out there, spent a first-round pick and a little change for Stefon Diggs. Is there a quarterback or even player, person, coach, GM, is there another person in the NFL that has more pressure on them than Josh Allen? I mean, AFC East is wide open. There's no Tom Brady, no more excuses. You got Stefon Diggs. Everything's a good defense. The window here for 2 years. Who has more pressure in the world, or not the world, in the NFL right now besides Josh Allen?
I mean, I can think of a couple guys. I think we'll start with just in his own draft class. I think Baker Mayfield has much more pressure on his shoulders because he was bad last year. I mean, I don't know how many ways you can say it differently. As good as he was as a rookie, he was bad last year, especially considering the collection of talent he has. They've gone out and they've rebuilt that offensive line for him in Cleveland. They have a Super Bowl caliber offense around him now with significant weapons. I mean, if you go pound for pound, player for player, I think you got to say Odell Beckham Jr., based on his resume, greater than Stefon Diggs. Jarvis Landry, greater than John Brown. Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. That's probably the most dynamic combo in the league at running back. And now they've mended their offensive line. They made some really good moves in the draft still to come. They're probably going to add a left tackle, one of the top ones in the draft. So all the pressures on Baker Mayfield because Josh Allen still has runway. He came into the league as a very raw player, and we've seen significant growth at each stage of this thing, from rookie minicamp to his first start, to the injury, to when he came back from the injury, to start of year 2, to after the New England game, to the playoff game, all the way through. We've seen consistent and steady progress. So now he's got to make the next step. The completion percentage has to take a little bit of a jump. I'd like to see a 300-yard game at some point, and not just because it's a 300-yard game, but because that tells me that the offense is being executed at a high level. And you have Stefon Diggs now. Stefon Diggs had a game last year where he had 3 touchdowns and like 180 yards receiving. That's more than half of a 300-yard game just in and of itself. So, I think Aaron Rodgers has a lot of pressure on him coming into this year. The way that they bowed out last year to the Niners, I believe it was. How long has it been since Aaron Rodgers had a Super Bowl title? I mean, the guy's really been invisible for the last couple of years. I think Tom Brady's got a lot of pressure on him. He's going down to Tampa Bay with a lot of weapons. And I'll tell you right now, if they come out of the gates in Tampa Bay flat and they go, say, 0-4, every talk radio show, national one in the country is going to say, oh, it was all Belichick. It was all the evil genius, Tom Brady, fake news. And so you're telling me that pressure there isn't going to be mounted through the moon? I think that the Bills have a tough schedule. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And I think that's going to keep the pressure on Josh and this Bills offense. But no, I still think the way that this thing is built and the way that Sean McDermott runs his outfit, it keeps the pressure off of Josh because he alleviates that pressure on Josh because he places the blame equally across the depth chart. So, and I think overall, the strength of this team is still the defense. I mean, we're talking about a defense that's probably going to be the best in the league. The Patriots lost Jamie Collins and Kyle Van Noy. They're not going to be the same defense next year. So I'm expecting that to carry the team still, and I think that will help alleviate pressure on Josh too.
Absolutely, and someone that could really help is Brian Dable. Brian Dable, kind of was the whipping boy at some points of the season last year. Sometimes deserved, sometimes undeservingly. He's dealing with
everybody's an offensive coordinator. Everybody's a play caller out there.
Well, yeah, back to Madden. Everyone's a great Madden player on all.
Exactly,
right.
Engage 8, baby. Just send the house.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Well, then you quarterback option out of it. No, I'm just
you run with the quarterback way too much in Madden.
I do because I have Josh Allen. No, but I mean, Dable's got a lot of pressure on him. He's got all these weapons. He's got this quarterback that's now this is his time with the quarterback. He's kind of losing time, in reality with this whole quarantine thing. We know he's working with Jordan Palmer. Brian Dable on the hot seat. If his offense is still in the bottom third, is he toast? Does he take the blame?
First of all, I'll say he's not on the hot seat, but there is expectation now. And I don't think that you can have a season unless they win 12 to 14 games where the offense is still in the bottom third of the league and Brian Dable's seat doesn't get warm.
Yeah.
And I think that why right now at this point, why his seat isn't hot is because I still think you go back to last season and they're going to have a tougher schedule this year. There was a lot of games, a handful of games where the offense was really good. I mean, at 400 yards of total offense, they spread the ball around, the time possession, they won time possession. I thought offensively, it was a really, really nice game for Brian Dable in terms of how he, the personnel groupings, who he decided to give playing time to. Now, I'd like to know a little bit more about Duke Williams and whose decision that was. But Duke Williams got 10 targets, which was, I obviously talked a lot about that the last couple months. More targets than anybody on Wild Card weekend, which to me is just crazy when you don't play the guy all season. But he left a couple plays on the field. John Brown left a couple plays on the field. That game changes dramatically if John Brown makes that grab at the 2-yard line that would have set up probably a likely touchdown. If Duke catches the one touchdown in the end zone, which was a tough ball, but you got to make that play. He
It's
makes
there.
those plays in practice. And that's what everybody, raves about Duke, is all these crazy plays he makes in practice. You don't go make those plays in practice and not make them in the game. And that's why I think they went out and got Diggs, because one of the big things that really stuck out about everything they said after the season was Sean McDermott saying they wanted guys that Josh Allen could trust. And I think Stefon Diggs has proven over the course of his career now, if nothing else, even if he's a diva and he's a distraction at times, he's a trustworthy guy when they're in between the lines. So, I think Daboll's got a lot more to work with. This offense has to be more efficient and not make as many mistakes. And I think that'll come with continuity. I don't think Dawson Knox will be nearly the liability as a pass catcher as he was last year in terms of the drops. 10 drops. I mean, you can't have that. You got to cut that number at least in half. So, yeah, I think I'm pro Brian Daboll. I think what he's done with Josh Allen has been impressive. That guy came out he was just a big blob of clay that needed to be molded. And he had a quarterbacks coach his first year who was really just terrible. And, no offense to David Culley, but the guy's a wide receiver coach. He should have never had the job to begin with. And they remedied that going into year 2. And I think that the consistency with Daboll, the relationship that he has with Allen, I think that says a lot about Daboll and his importance to this team and to Josh. And so this thing would have to go seriously off the rails for them to move on from Daboll.
Absolutely. I see what you mean. And honestly, who doesn't love an Isaiah McKenzie jet sweep every now and then? Those are creative as they get. Who doesn't love, the first drive of that Texans game? That game, the whole game's etched into my brain. But, we have Josh Allen running for 58 yards, catching a touchdown from John Brown. That was
Can you imagine if that design run would have worked that way in the fourth? Was it the fourth or overtime when Mitch Morse missed the block and then Knox missed the block?
Yeah, I know exactly.
The fourth quarter overtime. They
win
the game probably. So it's just the game of inches, man. It's a game of execution. You have to and that's another thing. Does Dawson Knox make that block in year 2 in a big moment in the playoffs? He probably does. There is still something that people forget because they won 10 games and they were much better. They're a young football team. And they were also a team that was learning each other all of last year. When you have a whole new offensive line, sans Deion Dawkins, that's it's going to take a while to figure things out. And I don't think Mitch Morse was ever 100% comfortable until later in the season. And even then, I think the potential for his comfort level and his ability to lead this offensive line in year 2 is substantially higher. So, yeah, I forgot what we were talking about, but yeah.
But yeah, the fact that you brought up that play, it's etched in my mind. I can't even explain how many times I watched the screenshot and then watched the game pass of that play. I count how many Bills players missed that block. I'm like,
yeah, it's tough, man. It's the toughest plays.
Oh man, and then the whole blind side. It was the most Bills way to lose. And it had nothing to do with the actual players on the team. It was just they're wearing the logo. They have to lose this way. It was just a team of destiny. It was a problem. Hopefully we can buck that trend.
Definitely. Now, Matt, and I apologize. I am a very casual fan of the UFC, but I do want to get your opinion on this as well. So everyone knows you were talking about it about an hour and a half ago. The cards for April 18th canceled. Dana White's been very vocal on he wants to be the first sport back. Do you think that still will be the case with the cards canceled, or do you think that this is kind of an indicator on this is going to be a very long process?
I still think it's going to be touch and go. I think there's still a lot of roadblocks, but I was listening to his interview with Brett Okamoto from ESPN tonight, and he said that the island fights are still a go. That's still the plan. They're constructing, a venue and, with an octagon, and the plan is to send fighters that are planning to be on a card to the island to train for weeks at a time. So they're, they know that they're fully healthy before the fight starts. So he'll do it, man. He'll get it done. Nobody grinds like that dude. I get a chance to, work with him and, for a big stretch of my time there before I was promoted the last year and a half I was there, I was in Dana's office every week. I did a feature with him every week. So I got to see up close and personal just his lifestyle, what his work ethic is like. And if that guy tells you he's going to get something done, he's going to get something done. And it's not even – it's for the fans, but it's for the fighters. It's for the employees. It's for the UFC. I mean, dude, I've seen a lot of stuff out there, like from media people that have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. And they're like, this is just egregious that they're trying to do these fights. Everybody I've talked to on the inside of the UFC is all systems go, wants the fights to go on, wants to work, wants to put on fights for the fans because that's what the UFC always does. So, just make sure you're smart about who you're listening to out there because, a lot of people, some people are plugged in. Like, for better or for worse, Ariel Helwani, I consider a friend of mine, he's got a lot of really good sources. When he says something, usually he's pretty plugged in. But other people that never talk to anybody I know for a fact are not plugged in, turn those guys off.
Got any names? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Do your power of deduction. You'll figure it out.
That's all I'll need to do. I mean, does not a Fight Island not sound like the most badass thing? It's like it's a plot for a movie. I think that's Mortal Kombat actually is.
They'll have to come up with a cool name for it because there's already a promotion called Island Fights that actually is on UFC Fight Pass, and it's an international promotion, but they'll have to come up with some cool like little UFC play on the words. But it'll be cool. And like, listen, man, how brutal are things right now? I mean, I'm running through the Marvel. It's ironic you got the shirt on there.
Yeah.
I'm almost. We just finished Guardians of the Galaxy 2. We're going through the MCU, like a couple of absolute savages. My wife and I, we're just tearing through this thing every night. We watch a new movie. It's great, but man, it's gonna run out here soon. So, we need stuff. I want the UFC back.
A little more than halfway through on that. Did you like Guardians of the Galaxy 2? It was kind of iffy on me.
I was talking to my wife about it. I kind of like. I don't know if I liked it more than the first one or if I liked them both the same. I don't know. Like for me, and I'm gonna wait to get to the end of it, and I might even watch a couple of them over again because it's a lot to take in like in a row. But I think like for me, the top elite Marvel movies so far, Iron Man 1, Winter Soldier, and Civil War are my top 3 right now. The first Avengers was really good too. But I just thought that those 3 movies were like, but everybody tells me to wait till Infinity War and Endgame because things get real dialed up. So I'm excited.
Yeah, once you have an IMDb page 5 pages long, of course the movie's going to be good at that point. But Winter Soldier is a great movie, regardless if it's a superhero movie or not. That's just a great action movie. I mean, that's up there. I mean, that's awesome. Well, that's all we have for you today. I mean, do you have any questions for us? I always like to end that way.
Yeah, I like thinking about a little question for the hosts. How long have you guys been doing the podcast for?
This will be our second season.
Second season?
I don't know. We started before we drafted Josh Allen. I don't even remember. They all blurred together.
No, this is definitely third season.
And what's the actual title of it? Mad Men?
Mad Men Sports, yeah. I don't know how we came up with it. We were like Wild Man Sports. We're like, no, Mad Men Sports. We're just gonna go with it.
There it is. Very nice.
Definitely.
Well, keep grinding, man. It's all about getting out content this time, especially what's going on right now. So we all appreciate you guys getting it done.
Hey, we're asking anyone, hey, what do you want us to talk about? What's going on? I mean, everyone's talking about the same thing at this point. It's not like there's a new development, but
right.
We're doing our best.
Well, let's get this draft going, and we'll have plenty more to talk about in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. Matt, you're like the Stephen A. Smith of Buffalo, honestly. You're everywhere.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
Oh, jeez. I appreciate the comparison, I think.
Yeah. You just need his paycheck now. I'll run that up the ladder.
Hey, listen. I will talk any nonsense in the world for that paycheck. I'll tell you that right now.
And he does, so it's a wash. There you go.
There you go.
All right, man.
All right, guys. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Be good.